Scan, revolutionizing attendance tracking. My name is Nicholas Sainata and I'm the tech lead, handling all the software development and anything that involves the implementation of technology.
I'm Connor Dupuis, I'm the design lead. I deal with user experience and UI development.
I'm Rohan Kohli, I'm the business lead. I'm in charge of developing the business plan and conducting market research. So the problem we have identified is that in large events such as school clubs, corporate events, or any circumstance where you want to track who is there and who is not, suffer from inefficient attendance tracking in the form of messy papers and long lines. So the breakdown. Through initial surveying we have done, we have found that school clubs are required to track attendance. And through some student surveys we have done, we have found that 80% of students are involved in 3 or more clubs, and most of these clubs are big clubs, where on average schools have at least 3 clubs with 40 or more members that meet bi-weekly or bi-monthly, which shows how involved students are in their clubs. And in businesses, day-to-day meetings that they have, they would like to have an efficient app that can store all their data and be extremely user-friendly, as well as any organizers of any events such as weddings, fundraisers, or parties.
The solution is Scan, a mobile app that is the total package for event attendees and organizers. So I'm going to run you guys through a quick flow of how Scan will work in a normal situation. So step 1 would be a group manager downloads the app and creates a group. Once that group is created, it is assigned a custom QR code, but more about that in a minute. Step 2 would be the group manager creates an event simply by choosing a date and a time. And finally, step 3 would be when the event arrives, the attendees will also download Scan and scan that custom QR code that was assigned to the app, and they'll automatically be signed in. And you don't have to worry about joining the group beforehand, because once you scan that QR code for the first time, you're also joining the group. Some features Scan has to offer is a comprehensive list of all the members, attendance tracking and tracking for other things such as hours if that's necessary, exportable spreadsheets for individual events so you don't have to worry about transcribing it to paper yourself. And now we have a feature that also syncs with your calendar on your phone, so it keeps you up to date and organized. So we're going to run you guys through a live demo, show you guys how this would work in action.
All right, so on the right here is a simulated device, and these are all the groups that we've tested with so far. And then on the left is the login screen that you would see on first opening of the app. So we have an account, go ahead and pre-filled, but if you were to register, those are the fields, and then on the login screen you can also reset a password if you need to. So we're going to just go ahead and log in. Since there are no groups, this would be what happened if you, on your first join, there's a little message that just tells you how that works. You can either create a group or just dismiss it, so we'll go ahead and dismiss it. And then on my screen here, I'm going to go ahead and create a group. To do that, it's as simple as pressing the plus button and creating a name. So I'll go ahead and create NGT. Now I can do a group type, so school, business, or community. And this is just a start to a more expandable way of customizing a group around the group manager. So this is just the first step to really bringing customization to a group. Once we create that, you can see it now on our home screen. These images here are to represent what type of group it is. So the schoolhouse is going to be a school, this is a community, and down here would be a business. And then under the name of the group is the level of permission. So our app is tiered. So you have officer, owner, and then member. So we'll go ahead and see what the owner looks like. So when you click it, you have a custom QR code, and then you also have, sorry. All right, so you have this, and then, there we go. And then here we have a members page where you'd see your members, and then also an events page. Sorry, the simulator is a little at the bottom, so I had to grab it. So then on an event, we can simply press the plus button to create an event. So we can do final pitch. We can do the date, which is today. We'll start the time now, and we'll set it for an hour. And then also, we'll go ahead and create a after party. We'll do that for now. Okay. And then now on Rohan's phone, he's going to go ahead and click this scanner at the top, and he will be able to scan the QR code. So just like that, you see the message as fast as a scan. He has been both joined to NGT and also signed in since there was an active event. Now go ahead and dismiss that. When he clicks on it, you see this is the member perspective. He can just see his events. So the one with the check mark is the event that he just signed into Final Pitch, and then the other one represents that he has not signed in yet. So then I'll show you what that looks like on the owner's perspective. So if we go over to members, we can see him right here. And if I click on him, I can see his attendance history. And then also, if I click on the event, I can see that too. His attendance history right here. Now, another cool feature, as Connor mentioned, is calendar sync. So Rohan, go ahead and go to your calendar. And if you see, we have NGT After Party. And that would sync with all the events. And now go back. So another cool feature about Scanned is upgrading. So I mentioned that there's owner, and then the officer, and then member. So simply, I can take Rohan from being a member to an officer at the click of a button. So on the members page, if I just click his name and then click this circle, he's automatically promoted. So now if he opens up Scanned app, you can see it now says officer under him. If he clicks on it, he now has the QR code. You can see the members and the events. The difference between the owner and the officer would be you can't promote other members, and then also can't delete members and events. The final feature we want to show you is exportable attendance. So if you see that export button at the top right, you can tap that, and then there's a multitude of different things he can do, but we're going to do a quick text. So he can go ahead and text me that, and I'll show you right here. We have our attendance. So he's the only member, so that's all it is. But I'll show you an exported attendance we did with NHS. So this is what it would look like at scale. You have all your members, checks and minuses. The blanks mean they were not a member at that event. And so again, as I mentioned, a lot of the features we have here are just hinting at the full capacity of the application, such as the customization and labeling. Eventually, we want to get away from the strict officer member, and when you create the group, you create those labels and set the features that you want those groups or those bodies of people to have. So that's it we have for the live demo. We're going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the presentation. So our target market, as we mentioned earlier, are the group managers of these events. But for strategizing instead of just leaping into group managers, we're going to first start off with school clubs, as we have easy access and we've been beta testing with them for a couple months now. So when we were collecting research, we talked to advisors and members of these clubs. And this helped us build up our business requirements. So the first person we talked to is Ms. Mobley, and she's an advisor of National English Honor Society. She told us a few things. She said she has to start her meetings late because the lines are so long. She's also worried that people are going to cheat the system. And her secretary has to take the paper trail left behind and create a spreadsheet and send it to her. And that whole process was unnecessary. With ScannedApp, it would just be express. So those were there. You see the features of the easy scan to sign in, the export to export to a sheet, and then finally we have in our final product boundaries, so you can set to make sure people aren't sending each other the code, and there's other safety features to allow safeguarding an authentic scan. Next person we talked to was Ms. Llewellyn, and she is the advisor of FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. And what she told us is, as long as she could create the group and have some administrative rights and then pass it off to her officers to really do the heavy lifting, she'd be okay with using technology. And that helped us get the level of permission and the distribution. And then finally we have Gabe Roman. He's a member of many clubs at school, and he told us it would be really nice with all the different meetings constantly going on if he could see one place where he could keep track of those, and that's where we did the calendar integration, where he can just see all of his events and the upcoming meetings.
So next we got competition. We have it categorized into 4 different user scenarios. First, pen and paper, which pretty much everyone uses, super easy, but it leads to long lines, wasted time, and it's easy to cheat the system because you can just write your friend's name on it, get a bunch of people signed in. And then next we have archive, which is made specifically for colleges, so you have to have a university email to even sign up, which Scanned, anyone can use it. Next we got Replicon, which is for a business with hundreds of employees, which tracks payroll and a bunch of other complex analytics. Where Scanned, you can customize it to whatever you want. And AccuClub, it's 4 clubs, but you have to go in manually import everyone you want in the club to be in there. So if it's a club with 300 people, like we've tested NHS, you have to go in there and import everyone. Where Scanned, the members have to come in and then scan it and they're in. And AccuClub, the pricing is just ridiculous.
So development. So when we were looking at the school clubs that we would test with, we decided to go with iOS as it was what majority of kids had. And so we just wanted to, for our beta, to just in our early version, to just have it on iOS. That being said, we use the Xcode development tools, and then also we've been testing it with TestFlight, which allows us to get it out to people on their phones without actually publishing it to the App Store. Then our actual development stack, we're using Swift 3.0 as our language, and then we are using Firebase for a real-time database and authentication, so it handles all the users. And then eventually it also supports Google and Facebook sign-in through OAuth, which we can implement in the future. And then finally, we do version control and backups with GitHub. So now we're going to talk about the project plan. Back in September, we started with just a simple idea. We dove headfirst into the market in November, talking to advisors, members, and really collecting those early business requirements. December, we were fortunate enough to move on in this competition. January, we started to develop our early beta, and by February, we were already testing it with small groups. From there, we would slowly add features, fix bugs, which there were a lot, I'll be honest. But it was nice to keep it small. That really allowed us to not have these huge problems with a large group, and that we were able to move a lot faster. We would see the problems at a small scale, move on, and then we moved up with the different clubs we tested with. All the way in March, we were testing with NHS with over 300 members. And then finally, in April, we were doing our pitch now, and then future expansion, I have a lot of exciting things to talk about. So first is marketing channels. We've already started to build a presence on both Instagram and Twitter. We're at ScannedApp. We'd love for you guys to follow us after the pitch. We also have a website, scan-app.com, and that is basically just information for right now, but that'll get totally spec'd up for a web console that I'll talk about in a second, and also for our ambassador program. The next part of our marketing plan is to attend national conferences. So since we're dealing with Future Business Leaders of America, NHS, which are national organizations, we see a huge opportunity to get our name out there. This summer, I will be attending the National Leadership Conference for FBLA. There'll be over 14,000 people there from all around the country in Anaheim, California, where I'll be setting up a booth with ScannedApp, sending out, giving out words, and then also you see over here we have Uncle Sam sporting the ScannedApp logo on his hat, recruiting for our ambassador program. So we want to build passionate students from all around the country that can get ScannedApp into their schools. And then finally for development, we're going to be polishing up the iOS app, creating an Android app, and then also a web console for better control for group managers. So here's just a quick peek at our website, and then here's the console. You can see, this would be, say, for FBLA. You can see your members, you can see different analytics like percentage of signed in, attendance, and a lot of other statistics to come. This was just an early design mock-up that we did, so we have the ball rolling on the console. And then finally, our future expansion market-wise, again, we're going to start with the school clubs. Once we have a good user base, use that as leverage to get into businesses and then the independent events.
So I just want to talk about what we have made in the competition so far and what we've achieved. Currently, right now, we have 5 pilots at Eastlake High School and 2 at Palm Harbor High. We started really small, like Nick said, with Disc Golf Club, had about 15 members, but it was good for testing bugs, and moved forward from there to Engineering Honor Society, to National English Honor Society, Future Business Leaders of America, all the way up to National Honor Society, which he said has upwards of 300 members. And a big step forward for us was expanding to Palm Harbor High, because it was really like outside, the ambassador program we started to implement with the people over there. We associate ourselves with the HOSA Club and their National Honor Society. So going back to marketing really quick, we have a quick promotional video that we made about ScannedApp. We're really excited to show you. It's called Scanned in 43 Seconds.
Than I thought it would be. I didn't know why it was called Scan until now, and I really appreciate the name. As fast as a scan.
So one final thing we want to leave you guys with is our challenges. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the challenges we had were technical. So I've been developing for a few years now, but this was my first iOS project. So the first big hurdle was learning Swift and the development stack and working with Firebase. Once we got past that, it was testing with the groups. And we have report outs documenting the step throughout the way on our Basecamp of all the independent problems we have. But it was nice the way we set it up testing, small groups and scale up, because we would see a problem, we could take care of it and then move to bigger groups. Especially when we went to scale at NHS, problems that we didn't have in a group of 10 people, we did have in a group of 100 people. And that was really nice to be able to test and scale up. So those were the major hurdles we had, and another one is the events. So before, for some reason, I architected it out that the events would be saved under the date. So quickly we found out that would be a problem because you can only have one event per day, which was really, I don't know why I did that early on, but the problem was we had already begun testing, and that database was the same thing we were using for development that we had deployed with the beta testers. So I was in a juggling for the past few weeks of supporting the older version and also developing our newest version. We had that conversion in our database, and we're running smooth now. So again, the tech problems are documented in our report. Okay, thank you.
So what you were just talking about, your challenge, is that why it's showing the date on all of your events rather than the friendly name? So like you created NGT and after party, but both events were listed by date. So if I'm going to the after party but not to the NGT event, how do I know which one it is?
Okay, great question. So from the for the owner's perspective, that is showing, so you can see after party. From the member's perspective, that hasn't been added yet. So that will be added. And when it added to his calendar, I don't know if you saw, but on his calendar, it was marked NGT after party.
Well, I did actually. I saw both of them were marked after party.
That was one we did a test before, and that was it.
So, and the other question I had, sorry, was your calendar. I didn't see anything about calendar. Did he allow access from your app to the calendar? Is that how it got put on prior to coming in the room?
Yes.
Okay, so you're accessing locally from the device to add it to the calendar.
Exactly. Yeah, we had already tested with it, so the permission box had already come up.
Thanks.
So did you find any, as it scaled, you came across issues, or what's the scalability limitations as far as that goes?
Okay, so scalability, it wasn't a problem of the amount of people. It was that with 100 people, there was a huge variety in phones and different situations.
Oh, okay.
And the problems that we saw were in an auditorium, the connection was weak. So there was problems with the algorithm that decides when you join and log in, which I have been working on fixing. So essentially there would be a little lag in it, and then the app would expect something, it would crash, but then it would still sign you in documentarily, but the app would crash. So it wasn't a problem with scaling, but it was at scale we saw the variety in situations.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So as you look at doing bigger groups and maybe in the thousands and that sort of thing, like, are there any anticipated problems or?
No,
Okay.
so I can say with our database, what we use Firebase right now, it has immense capabilities, and so it can do a lot of connections at the same time. So during peak times, we won't have to worry about that. And then also, once we get to a point where we're doing 10 gigabytes of download from our database a month, we'll have to move over to our own database platform hosted on something like Amazon Web Services, and those are even more powerful when it comes to scalability and connections at one time. So that wouldn't be a problem at scale.
Did I miss how you were pricing this?
So we didn't go over that because,
Shove it in my head.
yeah, thank you. That's, again, a great question. So when we talked to the reason we did not mention it is because we're not exactly sure how we're going to go about it. We have a few ideas, and I'll tell you why. So when we were initially thinking school clubs, to give you guys a little perspective, when we first started, it was purely school clubs, and we've since moved to overall groups. And when we were focusing on that, we talked to them. We said, oh, this would be great. We'll just have PayPal API in the app. You can just pay with a credit card. Well, quickly we found out that that was not going to fly with teachers. They would have to get it approved through the school and do an invoice system. So then we were thinking, okay, a 30-day period, we send them an invoice. They could try it out. After that 30 periods, if we didn't get the invoice back, then that would be it. So we're still figuring out the payment plan, and we're probably going to be flexible. So if it's a school club, they can pay yearly on an invoice. If it's a group, you can pay with credit card. That has more flexibility. And then for actual pricing, we're thinking roughly, again, about 50 cents per member, and that would go like a month transaction. So say at the beginning of the month you have 0, you could start it, and then after that first month, you have 100 people join, you pay for that. And then if the next month, whatever your net is, you would pay additionally.
So if you prepay for a year, how do you true up?
So with that, we will work out a system where you can set above where you expect, and then we will have we'll keep track along the year, and if it goes off, then you'll have a bill at the end of the year for that. And again, there's a lot of nuances with the flexibility we're trying to offer, so we didn't want to dive too much into pricing and plans right now, but we've definitely thought through a
Have
couple
you
of
guys had
things.
any sleep? I mean, you guys have just, you've done a
No,
phenomenal
we have
job.
not.
Yeah. But one of the questions I had, so I don't know if it's that you showed it from a group owner or not, but me as an individual, if I have multiple clubs that I'm associated with, I didn't see where that piece was. Or are you saying that you're just allowing them to export it into their calendar? Or they can see it as well on the app?
Are you saying, so if you were a member in multiple groups?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're a member, officer, advisor, on that home screen, those cells will be filled out. So you'll see, are you talking about the events or the actual groups?
The actual event, so let's just say
Okay,
I'm in
I'm sorry.
multiple
I got you.
groups, right? And so, was it this one?
It would look like that, right?
Yeah.
It would look like that. If I was a
Okay.
member of 5 groups, I'd see this,
Yeah.
and I could click into
No,
each one
but
and
what
see.
about if I just wanted to say, okay, what, for the week, these are the different events
Okay.
according to the different clubs that I'm
Okay.
associated with?
And that would export to your calendar, and so you would just be able to see all the events built up in your
So,
calendar.
but in the app currently, you can't see that?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
all right.
And that could be, when we start testing it again with all the new features, that could come up, I like that it saves in my calendar, but I'd rather have something in the app that brings all the events together. So we could have, an in-app calendar that associates them all. Because that's a good point to bring up, that currently the only way to see your events is by clicking the individual groups or checking the calendar.
So, just like as an owner, because you know that we're gonna start using this app for NGT.
20 minutes
Um,
ago.
Okay, all right, I'll just, never mind.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Great job.